Welcome back to Landlord Law TV. I'm Ben Reeve-Lewis, this is Tessie Shepperson. We're going to be talking this week about the eternal issue of pets in the home when the property is rented. Sometimes landlords allow permission, sometimes tenants will sneak them in without telling them. And as usual, we're going to start with a query. This is from Alice from Somerset, and she says, my tenancy agreement has a no pets clause, but my tenant has now bought a Cocker Spaniel. She says she's allowed to do this as my tenancy agreement clause does not provide for her to ask my permission. So presumably it just says no pets and that's it. Now, is this right? Is it enforceable?
No, it's not. And we know that because there is a case on the point. Now, years ago, it used to be fine to just prohibit pets.
They always said that, didn't they?
Yeah. But then in 1995 and again in 1999, we had the Unfair Terms and Consumer Contract Regulations. These are regulations that apply to all contracts that are made between a business and a consumer, and they're there to sort of enforce fairness because there's initial imbalance because the business has got solicitors and barristers drafting their contracts. Often the tenants the consumers don't even read them. So the law provides that they have to be fair. Now, we know that these clauses, these regulations apply to tenancy agreements, and there are various ways, various things that you have to do when you're drafting tenancy agreements. And one of them is, if you have a situation where you're prohibiting something, you have to, unless it's something that the tenant's not supposed to do anyway, like, you know, keep guns there or illegal drugs, because that's against the law. So you don't have to give them permission, allow them to ask permission for that. But if it's something that they would normally be allowed to do, like keep a pet, you can prohibit it, but you have to say in your clause that they are entitled to ask for permission to do whatever it is, in this case keep a pet, which the landlord must not refuse the permission unreasonably. Now, a lot of landlords, when they see that, they say, I am never going to allow pets in my property, and therefore I'm going to remove this wording from the clause. Now, the trouble is, by doing that, they are completely invalidating the clause, because it will be unenforceable under the Unfair Terms and Consumer Contracts Regulations. Now, leaving the clause in, it doesn't, as many landlords fear, mean that the fact that the tenant's got the right to ask permission doesn't mean that the landlord's got to grant it, because there are many reasonable reasons why landlords wouldn't want tenants in their properties, wouldn't want pets in their properties. I mean, for example, many people are allergic to cats and dogs. And they can be very destructive. I mean, if you've got a high-level property, you probably don't want a dog going in there, scratching the doors and ruining the paintwork. So, you know, that's perfectly reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that. So long as your reasonable is reasonable, you can say, I'm sorry, you know, I don't allow pets in my property for this reason. Permission refused. The tenant can't really challenge that, and they will be in breach of the agreement if they have the pet. If the clause isn't properly drafted, then it's unenforceable, and so effectively the tenant can have whatever pets they want. Now, I suppose the other thing is if the landlord wants to allow the tenant to keep the pet, because many landlords do. We're a pet-loving country. You know, we like animals, and often it's very beneficial for people to have animals with them. Like old people, apparently they live longer if they've got a cat or something. But if you allow pets into a property, again, this has to be reflected in your tenancy agreement. It's a good idea to have special clauses, particularly if it's a dog, saying the dog mustn't be left on their own for a long time, because that's when they tend to bark, isn't it? And, you know, that they need to look after the pet, otherwise, you know, you've got the right to report them to an animal welfare organisations such as the RSPCA. And also, in particular, you need to have the name and address of somebody who can care for the animal if something happens to the tenant. Because say, for example, the tenant has an an accident and goes into hospital, you as the landlord are responsible for looking after that animal. So it's quite important that you have someone that you can go to who can look after it if the tenant isn't able to do that.
Right, so it's something a lot of landlords don't understand.
A lot of landlords, I mean, on my landlord law site, we have special tenancy agreements specifically for landlords who allow pets, which have all these things in.
Oh, okay.
You can also get, there's a form that you can get from the Dogs Trust Let's With Pets website. And you can get some stuff there. They've got a very useful form that you can use. In fact, it's a very good website anyway, the Dogs Trust. They've got a lot of good stuff there.
I remember years ago seeing a landlord started up a tenancy, didn't have a written contract, and they got a dog. And he said, but you're not allowed to have dogs. And they said, well, we haven't got a contract, there's no clause.
Yeah.
And so he actually drew up a separate contract for the dog, I swear to God. And he prohibited the dog from jumping up at the window and barking at passers-by. I don't know if the dog signed it.
Well,
paw print on the bottom.
Don't think the dog's got legal capacity really to do that. You know, it probably wouldn't be valid even so. Going back to the unfair terms in consumer contracts regulations, I forgot to mention earlier that there is actually a specific case on the rule that you have to allow the tenant to ask permission, which must not be unreasonably refused. And that is actually a Spanish case, because this legislation is across Europe. And in that case, the judge said that they needed to have that wording, otherwise it would prohibit the landlord from keeping a goldfish in a bowl, which wouldn't be, you know, particularly problematic.
Just keeping a dog in a goldfish bowl.
Well, that would be different. That'd probably be going to the RSPCA and yeah. So there you go. Pets, you have to have a proper clause. If you don't want pets, if you are going to allow pets, you need to make sure that you've got all the proper clauses in your tenancy agreement to protect your position and to make sure that the animal's looked after properly.
It occurs to me that if a landlord didn't want pets and they didn't want to go through the rigmarole of evicting on the breach of tenancy term, and they weren't happy with it, they'd just serve a Section 21 anyway.
Well, that's right.
It's always been difficult for tenants with pets.
Yeah, I mean, if the tenant keeps a pet and you've got a proper clause and you know they are in breach of that, it's probably better to go under Section 21, because there is a ground for evicting tenants on the basis that they haven't complied with the terms of the tenancy agreement. I've got a feeling that there is a case where someone did evict someone on the basis of breaching the pets clause.
Yeah.
But it's a discretionary ground, it's not a mandatory ground. You can't be sure that the judge would do that.
Yeah.
So you're probably better off.
They've got to find it reasonable to grant the possession on that basis.
Yes.
Some landlords I meet, when they find out that their tenant has got a pet, they just say, pay me another few £100 as a deposit.
As a deposit, yes, that's often done. Yes, they have an
reasonable
additional deposit to cover any damage that's done by the pet.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's no problem.
It's a luck of the draw. We've actually got a Cocker Spaniel at home, but amazingly, you wouldn't know there was a Cocker Spaniel there. He doesn't bark, he doesn't chew the furniture or the carpets, he's toilet trained, everything's fine. So
I mean, if you are a landlord and a tenant comes to you and say, I'd like to keep my dog here, it's a good idea to do a bit of research on the dog. Perhaps go and see the tenant in the home that they are at the moment and see what the dog's like, you know, whether it behaves itself or whether it's a maniac, you know. And then you'll have a better idea. So you need to be very careful who you let into your property and the animals that you let in.
Well, that dog is a Cocker Spaniel, so he is a maniac. But he's a maniac with social skills.
That's right, yes.
He knows how to behave himself.
So there you are, pets.
Yes, pets. There you are, pets.
So that's all for us for this time. We'll see you again next time when we'll be talking about something else.
Yes, and we'll work out the ending properly next time as well. See you next time.
See you next time.
So, Jan, why am I here?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I suppose you're here because I started off in estate agency about nearly 30 years ago now, and I, like most people I know, fell into it rather than was sort of taken into it through the education route. And all the way through my career, I've been, as an estate agent, as good as the people who taught me in the job. And the problem is that there is no regulation in the industry at the moment that decides who can come in, how good you are. You sort of live off your wits really, and your training is in the industry is only as good as the people that you've trained with or the firms that you've worked for. So the government obviously are not interested in regulating the industry. They think that we're doing a great job by ourselves, and although we've got august bodies like ALA and NAA who are out there, the regulation and governance that they provide to their members, but their members are all voluntary. They're all people who have chosen to be regulated, to be out there and have a code of ethics and a way of behaving that the public can rely upon. But it's not those people that are the problem and that are giving the industry or maintaining a poor industry image. It's those who choose not to be regulated because they don't want to have to adhere to service standards and things like that. And so, because the government's not interested in regulation to bring those lower level performers up, my thought in my mind was, how do we get to improve our talent pool? How do we get a better, more level playing field for people coming into the industry? And so my thought was, well, if you can't get those who are in the industry regulated into being better than they are, let's take people who've never been in the industry right at the start and teach them the process so that the learning comes before actually going into the business. And that's where I started to have a conversation with Norwich City College and said, is there a way that we could teach 16 to 18 year olds, like doing a BTEC type of environment, and teach them using the NAA and ALA qualifications how to be good estate agents in a classroom, and then have them go out into the world with that kind of experience and those qualifications, never having learned to do it wrong, going straight into our businesses with a higher level of education than most people already there. So that was really where it all kicked off from. Norwich City College principalship were absolutely fantastic. They were very for it. They thought it was a great idea. They could see, and I demonstrated that there are jobs out there. Recruitment is really difficult in lettings and estate agency to get people to come in. So there was already jobs that were, unfulfilled that we could feed into. So I guess at that point we tested the market. There was interest out there. We put an advert up and said, anybody interested in this course? Lots of young people came forward and said, that sounds like a good thing to me. And with an entry level as many BTECs, which is 5 GCSEs with English and maths, it was a more attractive option than quite a lot of other things that were out there that they didn't think were quite so exciting as property and estate agency. So the reason you're here is that we then had to find someone who could teach such a course, a full-time course leader. So I guess we had a look around, and the college had a look around, did a recruitment drive, and you must have seen the advert.
Yeah, I was working as a mortgage advisor in Crawley, so near Gatwick, and I've got 15 years experience as an estate agent and letting agent, and owned a business, and I just saw it and I thought, well, this is actually a really good opportunity for the students. There's never been a course teaching children of this age, and I've lived overseas for a number of years and have taught kids English whilst I lived overseas, and I just thought this is a really good opportunity to get kids to engage with something that I didn't have as an option when I left school. I, like yourself, fell into it, so it was a really good thing for me to do. And since we've started, we had last year was the first year that we ran the course. We had 20 students go through the course, and the feedback was very good. They studied letting last year, and out of the students that studied letting, 9 of them have since gone on to find work in the industry. We've got 7 of them that have come back for a second year with a view to going on to university, and they're studying now the sale of residential property. And I just try and make it as vocation as possible. So what I'm trying to do is build a course that gives them an insight into what the legalities are behind selling and buying and renting houses, but also some of the practical tasks. So we've, for example, been out to Rightmove and looked at how the industry markets itself to the consumer. We've also been able to borrow from local estate agents some properties and carry out some of the practical tasks that they don't get unless they work in the industry, and that was quite a good thing. And obviously with yourselves, you've backed and backed the course quite heavily, and you've been in and spoken to us, which is great. So yeah, we're really pleased with the way things have gone. I don't know what your feedback has been, because you're the guys on the street. How have you found the students that because they've been in and had interviews with you, how have you found them?
Well, without exception, they are a really polished act, and I can't believe, it's sort of the Norwich NAA and ALA conference, we've met these young people who've come with just a few months really of teaching and learning in the environment, and they're so professional, and they've got a good conversation to have. They've clearly got a grip of how their business works and how businesses work, how estate agency businesses work. My firm, Arnold's Keys, has been a huge advocate for training and apprenticeships and bringing young people in and developing them through our firm. And for us, this is exactly the kind of talent pool that we want to tap into to bring people through into our business. Our business is a partnership, so we thrive on bringing people in and developing them through our firm. And many of my colleagues who are also members of the Norwich and District Association of Estate Agents, which is nothing to do with the National Association of Estate Agents, but they are equally enthusiastic, because we all have a common issue with employment, which is there are not enough people out there to employ in the roles that we have. And uniquely, I think we're sitting there as an industry saying there are just not enough applicants for every job that we put up. So for us, it's marvellous to be able to have this group of people that we can look at for next year when they finish their full 2-year course to employ in, and in some cases, as you say, even sooner. Yeah. So as a body of people, there are nearly 40 member firms in the Norwich and District Association of Estate Agents, and that represents less than half of all the estate agents in Norfolk. So those firms are very well on the radar of what we're doing. And other places in the country, I spent 2 years going around the country, or best part of 2 years, in my role as President-elect and then President of the National Association of Estate Agents. And I can tell you that the same situation is the case in almost every area that I've visited. And other colleges are now looking to Norwich City College Property Academy to deliver out the learning that we've worked out here, that you've thrashed through and ironed out as a teaching programme, into other parts of the country. And then we've got universities now looking at writing estate agency degree courses to link in for those who don't necessarily want to go straight into employment at 18 but want to take things on a little further.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? The kids are going to get the opportunity to go and work in the industry, and if nothing else, they're going to come out of the course with the knowledge of their own rights as consumers if they go and buy houses, and also their rights as tenants. So from their point of view, life skills are very important, and to see them grow from these timid little teenagers into adults that are preparing for work is absolutely superb, and I think that's the main aim for us, really.
Absolutely, and it not only teaches them life skills in terms of knowing what they're doing when they come to rent their first property, which for students typically is your second year in university, when you're kicked out of halls and you have to go and find somewhere to rent, and all the horror stories that people can remember from student days. They will have such a good set of skills to be able to manage that situation. But also what we call the soft skills will be there as well. They will be learning to negotiate, they'll be learning empathy, be learning customer service, how they can, how you deal with people, and those kind of skills are transferable to pretty much anything that you do in life. It makes you a better human being, it makes you a better other half to somebody, but it also transfers into other professions if you decide to do something else in the future.
Yeah, that's really good. I guess we'll just have to see what the students think now.
Absolutely, let's find out what they think.
Yeah.
Can you give your names and how old you are, please?
I'm Connor Westlake and I'm 17.
I'm Georgia Howes and I'm 18.
Okay. Why did you decide to come on the course at Norwich City College?
Well, I joined the course because I want to be a surveyor when I'm older, and this is obviously give me a good footing in the sector. As well, I lead to and do in my future career.
And I went on the course because it gives you a good grounding in business, as well as letting you achieve the qualifications you need to be an estate agent.
So what do you feel that you've gained from the course so far?
I've gained a lot of expertise in the sector, especially regarding estate agency, which is what we've been studying now, just selling houses, contracts, all that.
At the moment we're learning a lot about the law in property, also just general customer skills, you know, just a good grounding in everything you need to know really to then go on to work in that profession.
And are you intending to go into the profession when you finish the course?
Yeah, I'm hoping to enter the surveying kind of occupation when I'm older, hopefully by apprenticeship rather than university, but I'll do whatever it takes to get there.
And yeah, I'm either looking to go on to a state agency or, like Connor, go into surveying after the course.
Okay, thank you. Can you give your names please and your ages?
I'm Daniel Ringer and I'm 19.
I'm Molly Williams and I'm 17.
Okay, why did you decide to go on the course at Norwich City College?
I'd always been interested in a state agency, and this is the only course of its type really anywhere, so as soon as I saw it was there I applied and thankfully I'm on really.
Yeah, I was really interested in sort of buying and selling properties, so sort of getting into the property ladder, then learning more about how I could buy properties, do them up, then sell them on, make profit.
So what do you feel that you've gained so far from the course?
I feel we haven't just learned obviously the selling and the buying, so I think I've learned a lot about being able to sell and being able to talk to people as well, which I think is quite important about the course, as well as the law and all the other side of it. We've learned a lot more than that as well, I believe.
Yeah, we started off on the law, which was really interesting, sort of learning about how much there really is to learn about property and all that's involved in it, and talk. So we've gone out and spoke to the estate agents, which was really good to sort of see them.
Okay, and when you finish the course, are you intending to go into the property industry?
I very much hope so, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to do. At the minute I'm not quite sure what part of the property industry I want to go into, because there's lots of different, obviously, letting and buying, but hopefully one day I'll be in the industry of some sort, yeah.
Yeah, it gives us a lot of opportunities sort of taking this course, so hopefully that will give me a better insight into what I want to definitely go into, but certainly selling and buying properties.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.